Call the meeting to order. Rise for the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we please have a roll call? Can we please have a roll
Oh,
call?
I didn't hear you.
Sorry.
Wonderjump.
Here.
Hybor.
Here.
Buck. Here. Guardian. Here. Palmer. Dahan.
Here.
Klein.
Here. Please note, as a courtesy of the members of the audience and the Board of Education, to silence your cell phone. The public will only be able to speak during public comment if signed up. Do we have any forms? All right. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Support. All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. We just have one item for this period of time, which is to discuss or be presented information about a future action item that will be voted on in the next meeting, which is our budget.
You bet. And I'll turn things over to Heather, and she will present the different funds to you.
All right. So here are the items that we'll go over on the budget hearing agenda. We'll talk about the levies that are necessary for the proposed budgets, as well as the individual funds. And the main purpose of this hearing is to comply with the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act, which, again, the biggest impact is this slide here. This is the most important piece. This is what you'll be approving the district to levy for general fund. We saw a 7.3% property tax value increase for this year, which means we are going to see a large Headley rollback as well. So mills to be levied in the general fund for this coming school year, 16.8422. Debt service doesn't have a levy that expires, so that will remain at 5.05. And then sinking fund also received a Headley rollback, which will bring it down to 1.3521. This slide here is the slide that satisfies the truth in taxation requirement and allows us to then proceed at the next meeting for approval. So just a reminder what a Headley rollback is. It's when taxable values of current properties increase at a higher rate than CPI is increasing. And you can see we've been tracking this since 16-17. But for this school year, for 2022 versus 2021, we're going to see a reduction from 17.2 to the 16.8. I have another slide that I added that I'll show you in a little while that shows the total general fund. I really probably shouldn't call it lost property tax. It's just uncollected taxes since 16-17, but it has grown to approximately 2.7 million. Similarly, we've been tracking it for the sinking fund as well, and since 18-19, we've lost approximately 193,000. So here's that slide that I told you about. So you can see the sinking fund mills when we were Headleyed, and then in 17-18, that's when the renewal passed, so we were bumped back up to the 1.4, and since then, there's been a steady decline. As it relates to general fund, we will be bringing you some information because we're going to need to start going for our operating renewal. And there are different options. You can just do a straight renewal, which would put us back at the 18 mills, or there are other things you could put on the ballot to cover a Headley rollback, but that would look on the ballot as a new tax. So those are some of the considerations there that we'll be bringing to you. Just a reminder, sinking fund and debt fund, those are levied on all properties, while general fund is only on your non-homestead properties. And here, the annual slide of the debt service fund history and the increase associated with the passage of the bond in November of 2019. I added a couple new slides this year because I wanted to show you where Grandville ranks within Kent County. So we are number 4 at 5.05. 3 districts are lower than we are. And then if we take a look at Ottawa County, we're number 5. So combine the two counties, we end up, I guess what would that be? 8 out of the 2 counties put together. So if you have questions along the way, you can ask, or we can wait till the end.
How many of these districts are using the state's debt fund, or I think bond fund?
That's a good question. I'll have to look that up and get back to you. I
Could
honestly,
you
I
do
don't
that
know.
and just put, yes or
Just
no,
put a
yes
little
or no on
asterisk
this
by
list?
it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, my guess is anybody who's 7 and higher is typically,
Which is why I was asking that question. So the rest of the board can understand it too.
So you said our non-homestead value increased by what was the percentage?
7.3% in Kent County.
What was CPI then? It's got to be close to that, doesn't it?
CPI based on what date?
Well, that's just it. It
Yeah.
was from May to May.
So it's a May,
Um,
not current.
It's not.
I mean, it's pretty darn close. So.
It's higher
Yeah.
now.
8.58, but that's, you gotta remember too, that your debt is always a year behind, right?
Okay.
So next year,
Yeah.
fingers crossed, you won't see that, which means we would just stay at the 16.8.
Okay.
And that's why there still obviously would be an amount of uncollected, but you're not going lower.
Okay.
The only way to go back to the 18 is through a renewal. So let's say CPI is higher than property tax values, they don't give that back.
And you think they would.
If you're balancing it, right? That's the whole idea about
Yeah.
balancing it. It's not just taking
It's
it
really
away.
an unintended consequence of.
It's like a double tax
Delay.
on your stock.
All right, so debt service fund, the assumptions in this were just the levy due to the passage of the Proposal 1 in November of 2019, and again, 7.3% increase in property tax values. So looking at so again, too, with the debt fund, I should tell you, we sold Series 2 of our bonds, remember, for capital projects this past May. So with that comes debt. So that's why you see a jump in the debt too. So those amounts are included in there. So revenues of $10,145,000 and expenditures of $10,298,000 for a deficit of $153,427 and an ending fund balance of $1.3 million. Sinking fund, again a reduction from the 1.30 or 1.37 to the 1.352. Again, taxable value increases. The sinking fund is renewed through December of 2026, so probably a couple of years after we look at our operating renewal. We'll put together a committee to look at a sinking fund renewal as well. Sinking fund projects for this coming year, West's roof. We're going to do some work on the high school roof that we'll bring to you in the fall. High school ionization, you guys already approved that. There's a water line at West that needs to be reconfigured. And then there are some miscellaneous building improvements. There's some stuff we're going to do at the high school, to the press box to help with band, and there's some small amounts in there. And then of course our normal emergency fund, we usually set aside $250,000 for any type of issue that we run into during the year.
Where would doing something with River Bend, where would that come out of?
That would come from the bond. Maybe supplemented with sinking fund.
How could it come out of the bond? I'm curious with that.
If you
Because
build,
With bond funds, because that building has been existing, it has been,
the way the language is written, we can touch any of the buildings.
we can, okay.
has the
Parks and Recs and City and Grandville Little League talk to you about the water line? Like, they've done a lot of work at West just in the last couple months.
Yes, but this is similar to when we remodeled the middle school. It's the pipe that comes in from the road.
Okay.
So
it's the big stuff
It's the
instead
big
of just
stuff.
their.
Yeah, not
okay,
just the,
their
it's not
grounds.
irrigation.
Okay.
But yeah, no, we've been working with them on the irrigation piece. So right now, the prices that I have on the high school roof are probably 3 months old. So by the time fall rolls around, that ending fund balance could look a little different. But there is money there to cover that project, so.
Flex Seal, take care of it.
There you go.
Duct tape.
So capital projects, so I'm going to refer to this as always the May 2013 vote, was issued in 3 series. We are in our 3rd and final series. We have a small amount of revenue coming in and then the expenditures. So the hope would be that this fund would be closed at the end of next school year. Majority that's left is for tech. I know I have bus purchase on there, but there's a very small amount. And I should note, since we're talking about buses, the buses that we brought to you for approval in, I don't know, November, they now are scheduled to be built January of 23.
Oh,
So
Okay. Well,
just kind of an idea of where we're at with supply chain and stuff like that. So we are hopeful we'll have them by the end of 23.
Has there been any impact with inflation? I know we always have that fudge factor, right? I can't remember what we call it for overages, right? That's always baked into a lot of
Contingency?
these, yeah.
Yep.
So how is that being impacted at this point for any ideas about our future technology projects that we're gonna be going up for? I mean, are we gonna
So far from the
blow the budgets?
technology side of things has been okay. It's just been the timing of being able to get the
Lead
actual
times.
products. When we look at the remodel of the middle school, they've been tracking right along with what they've seen in other projects, especially with your HVAC. So I think we may have a higher contingency number that we bring to you when we bring that in. So. But right now, we just got a revised budget back on that, and it is looking good. So they did a lot of work up front on that to dial in on a lot of like the HVAC stuff and the new power to make sure that they had the right amounts and all that. So. And then the new capital projects fund. Again, we issued Series 2 in May, and then we're still continuing to pay on the 7-8 building. We'll be bringing the 5-6 remodel to you this fall. And then middle school orchestra instruments. So just so you know, we did all the band and we did the high school orchestra, but Sarah really wanted to hold off on the middle school just because of the temperature control change and stuff. So we'll be looking to bring that so that they'll have those in the fall of 23. So, yeah, so and then food service fund, again, Jeff and his crew, they do an awesome job. This program is totally self-sufficient. We're not looking at any meal price increase, and I know I have written in here that it's going to revert to the 1920 rates, but there are possibly, because the all our free is going away, but MDE has some waivers that they're going to put out, and I think they're supposed to be out this week about potentially reducing prices. So we, like as an example, free students that qualify for free would be free, but those that are reduced, we'd still have to charge like a penny, but we can bring it down pretty far for them if we fill out that waiver. So, and then revenues are mainly coming back from like meal sales, And then expenditures, we did include an increase in meal costs. I think we were looking at probably like a 20, just even too because of fuel and delivery, so like a 20% increase in meal costs. And there's also the food service office that is in this budget as well, a portion of it. A portion of it has to come from sinking funds. So looking at an ending balance of $1.1 million in that. And that could be an issue at the state level because you can only carry so much, but it won't just be Grandville with that issue, it'll be everybody in the state with that issue. So they may waive that, as long as you, what I'm told is, because we've never had it here in Grandville before, but other districts have. And from my understanding, as long as you have a plan of spend down, they don't write it as a finding or anything.
So our reduction in the meal costs will be our plan.
It would be partial of our, yep, yep.
And we won't have to
Yeah,
rush
we're also
out
going to look at
some money.
some of our our refrigerator and freezer space at the high school, because that hasn't changed since the building's been built. So
Really?
Maybe a few more cans of green beans.
Student activity fund. This is just an accounting rule, GASB implementation. We've been doing this even though we didn't need to implement it. We've been doing it for the last 3 years. Basically, all this is student fundraiser dollars that come in and go out. So, and then they want us to put it in this format for them. So, usually have about $430,000 in revenues that come in and about that go out. It's not really a fund. That fund is meant to be a break-even fund. And then last but not least, general fund. So assumptions for the general fund budget, we don't have one from Lansing, that is. So I use the executive recommendation that the governor released in February. We're estimating an increase of $435 to the foundation, which would bring us up to $9,135 for 22-23. Estimating flat pupil enrollment with the same 90-10 blend. Additionally, the general fund will see that same increase in property tax values of 7.3%. We included the final, well, I'm going to call it the final portion because we took our ESSER 3 funds and we kind of split them over 2 years. So this will be the final appropriation of $1.6 million in ESSER 3. And then the initial portion of the state stabilization funds, it's still all that ESSER ARP money, but it's a different bucket. We just received approval a couple weeks ago from the state for our plan for spending these funds, which again, it aligns with what we did with ESSER 2, ESSER 3. We're still funding the same set of staff with those funds. So, and then it eliminates the prior year one-time revenues that we received for a work comp piece and ESSER 2 funding.
Heather, that 87 to 9135 almost feels like a dream to me. It's actually going to go that high in your conservative estimation?
My conservative estimation.
The foundation allowance
Yes.
going.
In my conservative estimation, I think that is conservative, yes. I went with.
Are the funds that we're getting, that the state is getting on this, is this pretty much,
So
funding that came at the beginning of the year from the federal government?
it is actually, if you, the consensus revenue estimates have come in higher. And,
A lot.
and so remember too, what funds the school aid fund is your sales tax, right? A good chunk of your sales tax goes to that. So that's what we're seeing.
Okay, so basically we've got inflation that's fueling this
Yes.
great increase,
Yes.
which could fall apart on us.
Yeah, now I went conservative with the 435, but some of the people that are in Lansing and talk more, they said it could be 500 or 600.
Really?
But there's also, depending on what side of the aisle, there's also those that are interested in really taking a lot of that fund and putting it towards the retirement system. So just depends on how they agree to divvy it out.
They are, usually the governor comes out with a plan, House and Senate, then they get a small group in a room
They have a
and
revenue.
figure it out. They're in that part right now. It
Okay.
should be within the next week or two that we hear what it is. I think it's gonna be between 5 and 550.
Wow.
Is my guess.
That's amazing.
So on the taxable value increase, roller coaster, property values go up, property values go down, got the Helly rollback, but we've actually had a lot of property building in our district lately. Have we had any actualization of increase? Do we know where that's going to be at in terms of the increased revenue from having so many new developments?
So your additions are one of the factors that go into that Headley rollback calculation, and that's part of the reason that Grandville sees a 7.3% increase. Kent County doesn't necessarily see that.
Thank you.
Yep. On the expense side, we have the new contract in there. So steps average 2.2% with a salary increase 4%. Our staffing levels are remaining consistent with what we had the current year. MIPSR's retirement contribution remains flat at 28.23%. And
What's the magic on that? Why is that holding the way it is? It's scaring me.
It's a game.
You know how it used to just jump 6,
Yes.
jump 8,
Yes.
and now it's quiet.
It's
Well, inflation's
quiet, but
always
I'll put a
high.
slide together for you from when they,
It's so high.
I mean, it is high, but they were jumping it so much. It's almost,
well, remember they did the unfunded actuarial
Yep.
accrued liability.
Yep.
And so what happened at that point is they put us back to 20.96.
okay.
But however many years ago, I'll get a slide for that in here next time. So you can see those increases. But yeah,
Okay.
so no increase from 21-22 to 22-23, but we'll see for the future. And then employer insurance cap increase is going up 1.3% from 21-22. We also are, the district is also taking on those ancillary costs as part of the agreement too. So we'll pay those at 100% for dental, vision, life, and LTD. And then I did include a 25% increase in supplies, utilities, and fuel because we've already seen it in utilities and fuel, and not just from a square footage standpoint, but from just the cost. So all of that to say, our final 2021 budget, we're looking at a surplus of $320,000 with an ending fund balance of $7.5 million. As a percentage of expenditures, that is 10.49%. When we look to 22-23, a little bit of a deficit. I think we'll see this change quite a bit when we actually get a budget from the state. I think it'll be positive when we get a budget from the state. But conservatively right now, looking at a $7.4 million fund balance to end 22-23 at a 10.23%.
And if, foundation allowance does do what Roger thinks it's going to do, it'll be a
Yep.
mini Christmas.
And hopefully enrollment stays.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thanks,
So
Heather.
just the last slide is just to provide you with a history of our general fund balance. I may have made the comment before, so I will make it to you guys as well. I feel that this district can sustain what it's doing at this 10 to 12% fund balance. So it is a percentage of expenditures, so if your expenditures go up, then your fund balance still needs to go up. It's not just, you can write it off, of an amount. But I think we can make good strides if we continue to stay here and maybe get a little bit higher.
Nice job.
Thank you. Any other questions?
All right. Well, we will adjourn this meeting and resume the next meeting in 5 minutes. 55. Thank you, Heather.
Roll it. Yeah, look at that.
That was some light reading.
It's like-